Mountainhead is this new movie that's on HBOMax, which I was excited to watch. I looked at the trailer and I thought it was going to be one thing, but it turned out to be another thing altogether. Am I glad at what I got? Well, I'm still processing this film. I just saw it last night. And this is a film that's done by Jesse Armstrong. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, he did this show called Succession, a big show on HBOMax, which was about a very rich billionaire family and essentially the father figure leaving his fortune to his offspring. And so essentially this guy, Jesse Armstrong, is no stranger to the 1% and how they live. And they really try and show it, and that show really tried to show us that, yeah, these people aren't like us in the sense they just have way too many toys. And if you ever watch any episode of Succession, it's usually a very big budget show just because of what's going on in the background, because they usually fly to these very exotic locations and it's very dialogue heavy. And Mountainhead almost feels like an episode of that show, really. Now, the premise is something that, honestly, I had to look this up after I watched this show, because this is one of those things where it's like, it doesn't really explain everything, and oftentimes these characters use very business-oriented terminology to describe things, and I'm kind of going like, okay, what's really going on this show? I kind of had that feeling when I was watching Succession as well. It wasn't as confusing to say Severance, but it was like, dude, okay, stuff is going on here. So what I believe was happening, and I confirm this, was these four billionaires. Actually, one of them isn't really a billionaire, and I'll get to that. But here's what I believe is happening. There's four people involved in this. One of them is played by Steve Carell, or Carroll, I'm not really certain how to pronounce his last name. And he's the oldest of them. In fact, he's probably twice as old as the other characters. And I guess he was sort of like this, maybe he was a young investor, but now he essentially just lives, he probably invested in all these guys' companies, and he's just sort of living on his percentage, and he's just been doing that for the rest of his life, I guess, for a very long time. And it's told that so very early on that he has some sort of terminal cancer, and there's not really any cure, and so he's kind of grasping at straws here. Then another one of the characters, and there's four in total, he is the owner of this social media company called Tram. Doesn't exist, of course, but right now his social media thing is spreading a lot of things about unrest in South America and stuff like that. And then there's another one of these billionaires who runs this company, I think it's called Builter or something like that, and it's uses a lot of AI. And right now, Builter is making a lot of videos showing the unrest in these countries, but it's all deep fakes. So as a result, the entire world is seeing this tragedy unfold in South America, which may or may not exist. And this is all just going on in the background. So, and then there's the last one, isn't really a billionaire. He has made like maybe $500 million, but he's some sort of like big self-help guru. And he's able to afford this big mountain retreat that he calls Mountainhead, like Fountainhead, a book that I've never read because it's like 700 pages long. Sorry. But essentially, yeah, he's having them over there. And here's the issue. I don't know how these people became friends. This isn't really talked about in this film. I mean, did they meet at some, like, I don't know, billionaire convention or something like that? Because the last guy wouldn't have gotten in. And here's the thing. They decide to play together, and they act like children. They're basically they're spoiled brats who are they've got their toys, and they're just sort of letting their toys just sort of automatically play with each other, and then they just kind of watch the carnage, because it's very apparent that this is one of those films in which something like it's all really one set in this Mountainhead thing. I mean, they show brief glimpses of what they were before they got to Mountainhead, but you can tell that the world is in a state of unrest. Now, what I thought was going to happen in this movie didn't happen, which was I thought that essentially this was going to be a bunch of billionaires sitting around watching the world burn, and Mountainhead was going to be this one place where they start up society and and get rid of all they totally trim the fat on the world. Basically, the plot line of the bad guy from, say, Kingsman, the Secret Service. I thought that was what was going to happen. It doesn't go that direction, which I was incredibly astounded by. And then I thought what was going to happen was eventually all this unrest that's going on in the world was going to catch up with these guys. And how these guys were at this retreat, and they thought they were all safe, and then it was not going, and they thought it wasn't going to affect them, and then suddenly it comes on them. But then I realized what type of film I was watching, and I realized that the budget of this film didn't really look that big. I mean, they had they hired big name actors like Steve Carell and Jason Schwartzman, and some of the other two. I looked at their, at their resumes, and they've been in a lot of great things. And this is one of those films that requires the actors to really convey a lot of great stuff and to really build the world around you that you never really see. So what starts happening is eventually one of the characters, whose name is Jeff, I believe that he's the one who has this AI program that's really causing things to just really go out of control in the world, because he's the one who's posting these deepfake videos of all these supposed riots and stuff like that are happening in Argentina, and he doesn't. It's funny to see how disconnected morally all these characters are, that they don't care that there are people suffering right now. And I think that's really the point of this thing. But that has really been done to death, the idea of billionaires sit back in their ivory towers and watch the world burn around them. And that didn't really happen in this, like I said, that didn't really happen in this film. And I didn't really expect all this stuff to catch up with them. There's one scene that I thought maybe that was going to happen, where they try and turn on a faucet to get some water, and no water comes out. And I thought, oh no, it's happening, isn't it? And I thought this was going to be one of those films where you just start seeing like little things that show the infrastructure is really waning. And then, like for example, they turn on a TV and suddenly like they get no signal. It was going to be like one of those type of films, and then it was going to go into horror movie territory, and it didn't. Instead, what happens is this character of Jeff gets contacted by, I think, the president, and I believe it's the president of the United States, that to get governmental controls on his AI thing, and it's a deal that I think he wants to take. And so suddenly Steve Carell's character just wants to start killing Jeff. And yeah, this didn't come like suddenly, but it certainly escalates quickly, I have to say. Now, this film is like an hour and 15 minutes long, so here's the thing. They try and kill Jeff, and it's almost comical how it works. It's almost like a cartoon show. There's one point in time where Jeff is leaning over a banister, and all three of them have sort of agreed, we're going to push him off, but then only one of them does it. The other two chicken out. And then they want to kill him in his sleep, and then they botch that so horribly that they end up locking Jeff in his sauna, and then they start like pouring gasoline like underneath the door, and it's so funny that Jeff is actually trying to push the gasoline out, and they're going like, no, don't do that, and it's actually really kind of funny. And at the same time, I'm going like, this is so, I didn't even know what to make of this scene, because I was going like, okay, then what? You're going to burn the sauna down? That's going to burn the entire place down. And I'm going like, surely these guys know that. And also, surely don't they see that that's going to get investigated? If there's a dead body there, they're going to find out that that was arson. You're putting a gasoline, that's an accelerant. They can detect that stuff. They know how to do this. And but then again, I think that's really the point of these guys. That these guys are just, this 1% is completely inept. And I think maybe is that the takeaway? I'm not sure. I'm going to get into spoilers here since we're past the 9-minute mark. But yeah, the guy named Jeff manages to get out of the sauna. And here's the thing, they just make a deal with him. That's pretty much what they do. They just make a deal, and then they just sort of get bored. They just kind of realize that, because they had plans just in case the world was about to crumble, and they were thinking about how we can invest and stuff like that, so we can come out of this on top. They can just get bored with it, and then it doesn't look like these deals are even going to come through. So they may be not as rich as they're going to be. It doesn't look like Steve Carell is going to get his answer to cancer on this. So in the end, I think really only the poorest guy came out of this, because they think he got them to invest in his company, which I think was his reason for inviting them to his retreat. I don't know. I think this is an interesting film.